Emerson, and I'll be giving you my 2 cents. I have to do dishes. If videos are going to be loud, I apologize. There's not a lot I can do about that. It's super early in the morning, and I have to get ready for work. But I might as well just rant. I might as well just talk aloud to myself. If I do it now, I don't have to try to figure out how to do it later. Might just be like it's not a traditional channel. It's not trying to win awards or do things in a cutting edge way that's going to like it's not I'm not trying to I'm not my 2 cent reflects the person that I am. I'm not trying to compete against everybody else and prove that I'm better than everyone else because I don't care enough. I'm not interested in validating myself through the adversities of being challenged and then defeating the person that challenged me. I don't have the arrogance or the ego that is required to participate in like a sportsmanship type competition. There is a difference between cooperation and being competitive, right? If a bunch of people, I always think about humanity as pre-fire, pre-tool use, hunter-gatherer animals, right? And if the goal of the animal, if a man and a woman had to feed their children, and if the goal was to successfully hunt or successfully gather food to bring home to the child, the man and a woman should be in a cooperation trying to obtain as many calories as they can together, right? This idea that the world has pushed on us to where you're competing inside of your own cooperation at your own detriment is counterproductive energy to me. I don't need to be better than you. I don't need to be the best. I just need to be really good at my very specific task. And if I can be average at all the tasks and I can be put into any task with some gain or loss of efficiency within the cooperation, then I'm beneficial, right? Because let's say you have a job that requires, let's say there's a job that has 10 different things that need to be done, right? And you have Paul Emerson, who is not the best at all 10 of those jobs, and he's not the worst at all 10 of those jobs, but he's average in every job. And you have another person that can do 9 of the jobs, but can't do 1 of the jobs. And you have another person that can do 1 of the jobs really, really, really well, but he can only do 6 of the other jobs really well, but 4 of the jobs he can't do, right? We keep building teams in this way. Everyone's going to look at Paul like, well, you're not the best at anything, but you actually aren't even able to do some of the things, right? So your inability to even register on the actual radar is the problem, because you look at me like, oh, well, you're average in every area. Yeah, I'm a functional adult. I'm average in every area, but I'm average in every area. You might excel at one thing, which means that you're better than me in that one thing. But there are things that you literally just cannot do. There are literally things you simply cannot do. But because you're proficient in one area and you can get acknowledged and recognized and qualified for getting first place in that one event, you still want to feel like just because I'm average in every Olympic event, that's a problem or that's a deficiency. So I don't really do the whole competing and being in competition against each other and trying to prove that I'm the best and that I'm better than the person standing next to me. Because you shouldn't be, that isn't the goal that should not be the goal of the job. The goal employers want people to compete against each other at their job, so that the company benefits from the rivalry. If I can convince everybody to be the fastest sandwich maker, then I can get everybody to make sandwiches as fast as possible, right? But there's a balance. There's a balance, because you can be really fast at making a sandwich, or you can be really good at making a sandwich. And a lot of times, the more concise you try to do something, the slower you're going to do it. The slower you're going to be at it. And that's kind of the reason why that's kind of this kind of energy of how I'm feeling this morning. It's kind of why I decided to do the segue into part 2 of African American relationship dynamics. I don't really remember what I said in the first video, but I know I talked about the structure of society and the role of Caucasian Americans and Europeans, and I ranted about religion and its position and its place, and I ranted about a lot of other things. But when it really boils down to, for me, and this is how I'm going to frame this for people that are watching, I want to emphasize on the fact that I do actually have a wife. I had a girlfriend. I don't know what that tries to do. I really don't care, because she wants to be in competition instead of in a cooperation. I think that a male's ability and a female's ability to attract, sustain, and maintain a sexual partner for the sole purpose of having children and being able to raise their children in a stable, healthy relationship is the goal. That's the goal, right? You see all these videos about women complaining about being in a relationship and dating men, and the fundamental problem, these videos are for people over the age 18. The fundamental problem is the ideology about how we perceive sex as a recreational activity. And you may not want to hear it, but the truth is that sex is not a recreational activity. There are plenty of things that you can do recreationally that does not involve sex. Having the whole purpose of having sex is literally to reproduce, and no matter what anyone does or says or tries to convince you otherwise, it won't change its nature and its function. And the idea that men are able to have sex without the consequence of carrying a child for 9 months and being obligated to take care of this new person is going to always inherently be the burden of women. It's always going to be a woman's burden. She's always going to have to factor that into her desire to use sex as a means of recreation. Now, what we could do is we could change the dynamic of the world so that we're not raising girls to become women that believes that they should have the right to have consequence-free sex, because that would allow them to be mentally more stable, and then we wouldn't have all the conflict and all of the chaos that we have in the world presently. What we should be doing is we should be finding partners, right? One of the things I've seen a lot online is this idea that if a man asks you out on a date, should you have to have sex with him on the first date? Or if a man asks you out on a date, should you have to go 50-50, or is he obligated to pay for everything? And here's the obvious answer to that. As an adult talking to people under the age of 25, over the age of 18, the obvious answer to that is, why can't you hang out with your friend that is of the opposite gender to you and not have sex with them? What is stopping 18-year-old boys and 18-year-old girls from hanging out in public with each other able to go home at night and not have sex with each other. Because if you think about it, you can have a crush on somebody, and that person can have a crush on you, and y'all can hold those feelings for each other for years because you're too afraid or too shy or too worried about what will happen on the other end of that expression of how you truly feel about this person. You can do that for years with people that you actually want to consent to have sex with, and you never do. So if that's a possibility, then where does all of the adverse chaos of sexual relationship interactions come from? Where does all of the other stuff come from, right? If we know that that's a normal thing that can exist in society, then where does it all come from? It comes from the simple fact that if a woman wants to, modern females have got moved into a place where if you don't like a guy, but you want to go on a date with him, you will hang out with him, treat him like shit, disrespect him, be rude, antagonistic, confrontational, arrogant, all of those things that make you a strong, independent woman. And then dismiss him. But because your biological nature implies that you want to be better than the other women, the same dude that you dismiss, if you see him with the girl that you envy or the girl that you have the highest regard and respect for, you're going to feel some kind of way now because you feel like, oh wow, I've been competing against her and she wanted him and I had him and now I can't, now I'm not with him. That energy is unnecessary, complicated. And it would be awesome if I had a female perspective on what I'm saying, but for some reason, I can't get women to be functional adults. So you just get my perspective. You just get the single-sided, one-sided, don't have all of the answers, don't have the entire picture developed answer, and you get to hold what I say against how you feel. Because I'm not telling you that how you feel is wrong, and I don't believe that what I'm saying is absolutely true for everyone. But I've been alive long enough to know for sure that it is definitely true for a lot. So with all of that said, we move into the space of the relationship dynamic between the African American man and the African American woman. And I want to address the idea of African American men dating outside of their culture, because this goes straight into the education, the imbalance in higher education between the African American man and the African American woman, right? Because the average African American woman is the most educated person in America. And on average, highly educated African American women seem to be the least socially functional people in the country. As much as you don't want to hear it, as women gain higher education, they become less compatible as sexual partners and parents to potential children in the future, right? Oh, well, I'm more than a sexual partner. That might be true, but what is the goal of turning 18, going to college for 4 years, getting a high-paying job so you can afford a middle-class to upper-class life if all you're going to do is have a dog? You don't need all of that extra stuff just to support you and your cats, right? You're going to lose the capacity by which you're going to be able to maintain and sustain a healthy relationship with the man. What's the point? And here's the caveat. You're like, well, if I'm a well-educated, high-paid woman, then I should deserve a well-educated, high-paid man. That's fair. But the question is, why is it okay for a highly educated, well-paid man to get into a relationship with a random female that is orders of magnitude less educated than him and earning significantly less than he is, and then she benefits from that? But for some reason in the way the world is structured right now, African American woman has been given an ideology that doesn't allow her to become emotionally invested in and support of the African American man? What is the goal? Why do you have education and you still have multiple baby daddies on child support and you're still living by yourself and you're still dating and you're still trying to find a partner to spend the rest of your life with? My perspective is that the reason is because we are unknowingly, because we're not raised properly, we are all unknowingly trying to seek out a relationship with somebody that we are in love with, instead of building strong bonds and relationships with people that care about us. And it is our desire to want to chase after the euphoria of being in a relationship with somebody that we are in love with, instead of our higher cognitive ability to be in a functional relationship with somebody that is a good partner to us, that becomes the actual problem. To me, that's what it seems to be. Because we pass up so many relationships throughout our lives, so many friends, so many, even the idea that when you date a girl, as soon as you say, I have a girlfriend, you're supposed to not ever talk to any other female ever again while you're in a relationship with one woman. And then we wonder why women become bitter in their relationships, because they don't have a social circle. Like, I abandoned my whole social circle for you, and now I don't have anyone to talk to, and I don't have anyone to hang out with, and I don't have anyone to spend time with, and you're always busy at work. So you should be able to have friends. You should be able to have friends. You should be able to have friends that are both male and female, and I should be able to trust you to only have sex with me. You should be able to do that. That would be a functional regard. You know, I come home from work, and you should be able to tell me about all the experiences you have with your male friends. You should be able to tell me all the experiences you have with your female friends. That should be normal. So that way, when our friends start having kids, we can have a social circle of our friends having kids, we're having kids, we're building relationships and bonds, and our kids have this circle because their friends are our friends. But guess what's infringing on that? The government. The government doesn't want you to do that. The government wants your allegiance and your loyalty to be just to it. It doesn't want an entire neighborhood of people to be alliance with each other and run the police out of their neighborhood. The government wants everyone to be separate and divided so that they can govern, so that they can control and they can exploit. So they don't care. The government profits off of our chaos. The government profits off of our inequality. And the government's function should be to support and sustain the corporation so that we are able to be functional, we are able to operate and work together, we are able to get along, we are able to have those kinds of relationships with each other. I'm not saying that we're all going to be best friends, but the vast majority of the chaos that exists is not necessary and it's unnatural. There's a lot of adversity that exists between men and women and between groups of people that are not built on, you did this to me and this is why I don't like you. And to me, it makes more sense for that. It makes more sense for you to be mad at me because of something that I actually did to you, and not just because you watch Fox News for an hour and a half and now you're mad at the world. To me, that's what's the real underlying conflict. I don't really have an issue. I don't even have a problem with Caucasians believing that they're superior to Africans. If we're honest with ourselves and we acknowledge everything that is said, so the Caucasians are superior to Africans. If we're honest with ourselves, they invented guns, they went around the world, they murdered, they plundered, they raped, they destroyed, they killed, they usurped governments and destroyed entire nations. They put entire people into slavery for more than 300 years. If we're honest with ourselves, they are superior. But the conflict is that we're not honest with ourselves, because once we are truly honest with ourselves, we recognize that aggression is not the founding principle that the human condition was built on. The human condition is built upon cooperation. It's built upon working together and being part of a community. Being a parasite inside of a group doesn't make you superior. It makes you a parasite. Your inability to acknowledge and respect the individual rights of other people doesn't make you better. It proves that you are actually worse. It proves that you're worse, right? And this is the part that Europeans always want to try to deflect from, or want to try to pretend like, oh, that's not. They want all of the benefits and all of them, the glory of, to say that they did all of the cool stuff, but they don't want to be held accountable for all of the adversities and the evil that was done. And it's counterproductive, right? Like in 2026, you want to run around and call yourself white. You want to call African Americans niggers for what? For what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? Like, it's funny. I know if you're a child, I know that saying that word is funny to you if you're not an African American, because you don't have the direct understanding or the direct knowledge about why that word is bad, and you think that it's just profanity. It's not hurting anybody. I know I can understand that from the perspective of me once being a child. But what are you trying to achieve? What is your goal? Are you deliberately trying to hurt somebody's feelings? Are you trying to trigger someone's trauma? Is that the goal? Is that what you're actually trying to do? Are you trying to just be ironic? Because there's other ways to just be ironic. There's other things that you can do, and there's other ways that you can engage to where you don't have to engage in the most taboo of taboos, you know. Imagine a guy running up on a woman and raping her because it's funny. Because that's literally the energy that nigger carries, because we've become so detached from society as a people. Because you got Dave Chappelle and all these other comedians up on the stage laughing and joking about it, and then we decided to create nigga, like we can just change the history of the word. That word carries all of the pain of what the African Americans went through, from all of the 300 years of all of the enslaved people that were treated like shit, that were everything. If you go to Wikipedia and look at crimes of humanity and look at the list of things that are defined as a crime against humanity, that is what Europe did to the African Americans. That's what they did to the Africans. And then once the colonies united under the ideology of white and fought the Revolutionary War to form the foundation of the United States as a country, they did it from that legacy, right? And then from that legacy, they chose to continue to perpetuate the idea of institutional racism. They chose to just continue doing what Europe had created, and Europe had the American colony set up for cheap free labor in the South, and in the North they had the South had cheap free labor, the North had cheap paid labor. And those were the conflicting ideologies that created the Union and the Confederate. And then they already had standing armies, so they decided to redevelop and rebuild the nation. So they went to a war, which was a civil war. And during the Civil War, they fought under the banner of white, so that they could continue to justify what they were going to do, and they were going to determine who was going to how they were going to handle the transatlantic slave trade, which Europe had started. And from that, they ultimately built. we know what happened. The Union won, the Confederates fell, and then the Africans became free. But there was so much hatred. The energy of the word nigger had existed for so long that instead of the African and its descendants, the African Americans and the indigenous dark-skinned Americans actually being allowed to be free and actually being allowed to actually operate as citizens of the country, we were subjugated to the rules enforced as non-citizens. They created an entire country. I want you to understand, the United States was a colony of Europe. And everybody that was here, every group of people that was here was subjugated and oppressed by colonial Europe. And when Europeans finally was able to stand up, because they were the ones that were in a position of authority at the time, when they finally stood up to fight against the oppressive regime of the European powers, they formed the United States. And they formed America. And they formed America, specifically North America, under the understanding that Africans were not human. And then as time went on, they decided we need to unite under one banner, and we have to decide if we're going to have forced labor or free labor. And they were divided on that issue because the South loved their free labor, and they didn't want to give it up. So they went to war, which was a civil war, and under the Civil War, they continued to fight under the banner of being white. And they were going to decide if they were going to keep in forced labor or if they were going to free the Africans. And once the Confederates won, they declared the Africans as free. They declared them as free, but they treated them like they were a foreigner. You're free to do whatever you want, but you have no place inside of our white society. So the Africans with no infrastructure, nowhere to go, no education, was stuck in a country that didn't really want them and looked at them as if they wasn't equal and wasn't qualified to be equal, but still had to survive and still had to be able to take care of themselves and provide for themselves on their own. And so we got what we refer to as black people. And unfortunately, nobody wants to actually have a real conversation about it. So we don't ever go anywhere. We just keep defining ourselves as self. The average person defines the idea of a black person as selfness and tries to project selfness on everybody else as a connection. And that's just not how life works. Like, to be a black person is to be a subjugated, oppressed people that have no history and no lineage because your ancestors were being treated like cattle. They were being treated like property of agriculture. They were beasts of burdens, no different than the ox that pulled the plow or the mules that transported goods and services across the country. Like, we don't want to deal with the uncomfortable part of that happened to our ancestors, but that's what it was. That's what it was. And it was illegal for Europeans to do anything other than that. So they did what they had to do to be in compliance with the laws and the ordinances and the regulations that existed at the time. But in the modern time, it's a choice. We choose. We traded Europe for corporations. That's the gist of it. All of the corporations that existed in the past, all of the governments, all the kings and the monarchs and all the lords that existed in the past were traded for corporations in the present. That's the reason why there's a war going on in Iran right now, and it's the same war that's been fought for more than half a century, because the United States recognizes that what we did when we broke away from Europe and dominated the world is potentially what Iran can do if they chose to do the same thing. If Iran chooses to unite and unify and work together, they could overthrow us as the leading world power. This is the United States talking, and then they could become a dominant person of authority and the leaders of the world if we're not careful. And in that, I need to check the time. I still got a bit of time. And in that, the United States was like, well, we don't want that to happen, so we will indirectly fight a proxy war and keep them from going, right? Paul, what does any of this have to do with the relationship dynamic between the African American man and woman? I don't understand what's your point. The point is that if the United States is willing to go to another physical location on the planet to destroy another established culture, the same way they did the Africans to begin with, to ensure that they get what they want, why do we as individual people in this country believe that they will make good on the promises that they continue to break? They continue to say that they're going to do a certain thing and then they don't, right? They continue to say, we'll do this, don't worry, we'll do that, don't worry, and they don't. And I spent all my life being raised to follow rules and do as you're told and benefit from achieving that objective. And I'm starting to believe I was the only person that did it, because I don't understand why there's such a disconnect with everybody else. But that's not what works in society. It doesn't make, I've said this screaming and yelling at the camera 1,000 times. It doesn't make any sense for us to raise children with values of right and wrong and teach them how to obey social norms and operate under social dynamics if when they become an adult, none of that stuff's going to matter. What's the point of even wasting our time raising children to know how to do that stuff if they're going to become an adult, and then we're going to just look at them like there's something wrong with him because he wants to follow the directions. There's something wrong with her because she understands that what we're doing is wrong. Like, what is the point? What is the point of even having a structure if we're just going to expect people to not follow the rules? Are we raising kids to know what the rules are so that they can not do any of that stuff? If that's the case, then why are we being counterproductive? Why don't we just tell them that they're supposed to be evil, they're supposed to break the law, they're supposed to be rude, they're supposed to be disrespectful? You know how much easier it would be to be in a relationship with a female if we were raised to understand that they're supposed to be bitches? What's the point in convincing us that we're supposed to be chasing ladies when we're expected to accept women as hoes? What's the point? Why even waste energy? We could just do it directly, you know? So that's the functional adult part. That's the reason why the relationship dynamic between the African American man and the African American woman fails, because the African American woman buys into the belief that if she gives her consent and is in compliance to the established governmental structure, then they will benefit. The reason why the African American female doesn't understand the African American male is because it's hard for them to understand that the things that they receive is exclusive to them as women, because they don't recognize the fact that you're not equal. You want to walk around and have this ideology like you're equal, but you're not equal. You don't have to deal with the same adversities that men have to deal with, but you believe that you should get the same. You're not competing at the Olympic level, but you feel like you should get an Olympic gold medal, and you're not equal. Like the average female that is on child support operates as if she's equal to a woman that's struggling to be a single mother. You shouldn't even be allowed to call yourself a single mother if you're getting child support, because you're not doing anything as a single mother. You're not engaged in single motherhood. You're not capable of providing for a child on your own without the benefit of the father, because the father is giving you child support. So it doesn't even make any sense to hold yourself at that level of I'm providing for my child and I'm doing all this stuff for my child and I don't got nobody's help, but you get a check from the government every day. If you're on welfare as a single mother, you can't say that you're equal to men that are out here actually struggling and surviving and can't get rent. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to help. Nobody wants to understand world has convinced us that the failure of one person is an unwillingness to cooperate and to operate in a functional way when you really just don't want to be disrespected at work. You know, like all the efforts I'm going through right now is simply a consequence of me not wanting to punch people in their face. Like, it doesn't even make any sense that I decided, you know what, I'm not going to hit this person in his throat. You know what, I'm not going to, you know, come up in here with M16s and grenades. I'm not going to massacre and murder everybody. I don't need a participation point award for it, but being humble and respectful, despite my background of growing up in Detroit, Michigan, I shouldn't get challenged every goddamn day. Like, it doesn't make any sense for me to have to constantly validate myself to people that I'm a decent person and then be viewed from my decency as not functional. I can't believe that I walked up to Paul and was rude and disrespectful and he was humble in return. Is he retarded? It doesn't make any sense to me that that's the position that we take. It doesn't make sense that when somebody is kind and honest and decent, that is viewed as maybe they're ADHD, maybe they're dyslexic. You know, he didn't even notice that I was being rude. He must have a problem. No, maybe he noticed that you were rude and he chose not to be rude as well. Maybe he knows that you were being disrespectful and he decided not to return your disrespect with disrespect. Maybe he was raised to understand that two wrongs don't make a right, and if you say something hurtful to somebody, the correct response is not to facilitate with more hurtful energy. Maybe that's really the way this works. You know, maybe you actually are the problem. Maybe you actually are out of line. Maybe that is the actual answer to the test. But the way society is structured and built, the victim is always the one that is on the wrong side of the justice system. And unfortunately, the victimizer is always the one that winds up getting all of the praise and all of the... Dang it, I forgot I broke that part. Can't finish my spaghetti. My larger pot for one of my noodles is broken. I forgot it was broken. I have to go get another one. So I guess I'm only gonna make partial spaghetti. But yeah, the victimizer is always the one that gets acknowledged, the one that always gets listened to, because they're typically the person that has mastered the art of telling you what you want to hear. And since we want to hear what we want to hear, and we don't want to hear what we don't want to hear, being given the truth on one hand and being given exactly what we want to hear on the other hand is usually favored. It's usually favored when someone says, this is what you want to hear, so I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. And then it's like, yeah, they told me what I wanted to hear. And you know who is being told what they want to hear more than anybody else on the planet right now? The average African American woman. She is not being told what she needs to be told. She's being told what she wants to hear so that they can use her to keep the average African American male from being in a position of power to have to compete against us in society. And the truth of that statement is in the equality that is experienced by all groups of culture except for ours. Because the average African American woman makes more money than any other group of women, but social norms dictates that the average African American female will not help and support the average African American male. And even though the average African American male is undereducated in relation to the average female, he still makes more money than the average African American female. The prosperity and the quality of life of the average African American male, despite all of the things holding us back, is still higher than the average African American female. What you see of Paul Emerson
is what happens when we align ourselves with being decent human beings in a system that is designed to force us to fail. That's why I call it racism. Because this is the quality of life of someone that wants to be genuine and honest, kind, decent, and respectful with my skin complexion and my hair texture. Whereas you see the quality of life of the average American that can run around the planet and be racist as fuck. If you really think about the fact that a Caucasian American can be racist and get support for being racist against me, and it negatively affects me to the point where I wind up homeless on the street, but they can get the support they need to be able to live a comfortable life, you have to ask yourself, why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? Why is it profitable for them to be rude and disrespectful and cantankerous and they can benefit from it with a higher quality of life at the destruction of somebody like me that's just not punching them in their fucking throat? Why is that okay? Why is the country invested in that? Why is the country invested in that? You're trying to destroy somebody's ability to function and live an honest life by using the N-word because it's ironically funny, and these people need to just quit whining and complaining and pull themselves up by their bootstrap. And the vast majority of Americans will look at other Caucasian Americans and connect at that level with them. But the only thing that we're doing was trying to destroy the life of somebody that's trying to do their best to survive the same way they are. Why is that? Why is that the thing? Why is that what's going on? How is that beneficial? How do we as a country benefit from that? And the sad reality is that it only exists so that corporations can underpay us. It's the only reason why it exists. You go to work as a Caucasian American and you work next to an African American, regardless of gender, and you wonder why, I don't understand why my African American colleague doesn't perform or work as hard as we do. And it's like, because we don't get paid the same amount of money that you get paid. We work twice as hard as you for less pay. I don't know the exact number, but we're working twice as hard for less pay. And then when you are an African American at work and your Caucasian colleagues aren't working, they're not moving the way you're moving, and you're like, I don't understand why they're not motivated, because they're not having the struggle. They're not working hard because they're comfortable. They're comfortable with their life and they're living at a comfortable level. So why would they work extra hard when they receive what they need to be able to survive? Why would they work extra hard? You're working hard enough for them because the competition part is there. We're gonna pay you a little bit more because you're Caucasian American. We're gonna pay you a little bit more than the African American so that we can underpay them to get more work out of them. We're gonna get more work out of them from underpaying them, and we're gonna put you in a position of authority as a Caucasian American to tell on them when they're not working harder than us, when they're not working harder than you, so that we can just replace them with somebody that is more motivated and more in line with that. That's the society that we have built. That's the world that we're currently living in. And the Caucasian Americans don't recognize the fact that if they're willing to undercut non-whites, non-Caucasians, non-Americans, non-legal Americans, if they're willing to undercut them to pay them less, what makes you think that they're not paying you less than you deserve as a Caucasian American, right? But we don't think that critically about anything in life. We don't have to. That's the reason why everything is the way that it is. That's the struggles of the world are a direct consequence of these things that we don't acknowledge on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I'm forming my 2 cents. Because we should be able to have enough. Like, I think that what all of the conflicts that I had with my mother growing up as a child the one universal constant I think that me and her agreed at was she used to always say, as long as I have enough money to pay my bills, as long as I have enough money to live a comfortable life, then I don't need anything more than that. I'm okay with that. And I honestly think that as a universal constant, as much as we don't agree with our parents, I think as a universal constant, I related to that. Yeah, if I can go out in the world and make enough money to be able to live a comfortable life, that should be enough. You know? But the amount of work that I have to do to be comfortable in relation to the amount of work that the females next to me have to do to be comfortable, it's not something that is compatible. And African American women always want to get African American men to understand that if you do this, then you will get that. But that doesn't apply to us. That applies to you. That applies to you as a woman, because you think that we're equal and we're not. You think that the quality of experience that you're having in this world, on this planet, in this country, is equal to what I'm experiencing, what I'm having to deal with, and what I have to do. And they're not the same thing. And you're mad at me because if you feel like if I would just do what you do, you're a woman. If I do what you do as a man, I become an effeminized man, and I'm not going to be respected as a man because I'm trying to be a bitch. That's literally how it works. I have to show up and be a man. I don't get to whine and complain. I don't get to argue and fight. I don't get to have an opinion. Nobody is going to see me or hear me, and I'm not going to be recognized and respected. Literally, nobody cares. Like, literally nobody cares. The best example I could give of that is my manager. She was gone for the last couple of days, and I was having car issues while she was gone. And so she comes back to work. She comes to work, not today, not yesterday, but the day before yesterday. And she puts we have a meeting about an opportunity in the company. There's a potential promotion in the company, and so she puts the information out, and she's like, just let me know later if you're interested. And so I communicate to her that I'm interested, and she's not interested in training me because I'm not interested in competing, right? I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm not competent, I'm not capable, I'm not interested. I'm operating at my level. I'm not interested in giving the company the extra that is expected of me as an African American man, and they don't understand why I'm not willing to do that. So I don't have what it takes to take on more responsibility despite all my experience as a military veteran and all my experience before that. I just show up and I'm constantly told that I'm not performing at or above the level that they expect of me. That is what I'm reminded of every day. And I'm fine with it because I'm not doing that. I'm not going above and beyond. I'm not giving 110% because I don't believe that there is any such thing as 110%. I'm not coming here to put on a show for you. I'm not a tap dancing coon. I do the work that is expected of me at the level that is expected of me. You expect me to not be at your level. You expect me as an African American male to not be at your level because you're better than me. So why should I challenge that? Why should I create an image of myself that makes you inferior so that you can be mad at me? I'm not gonna do that. So that was yesterday. That was that day. Yesterday, right? Well, okay, before that happens, the meeting, I let her know that that's what I want to do. Her response to me lets me know that she's not going to provide me with the promotion. She's not going to give me the promotion. She said, well, in the morning, I'll see who else is interested, and then we'll see how it goes. The next day, one of my coworkers, a younger gentleman, she makes it clear that she's going to let this younger gentleman perform this particular job that I'm asking for, even though I need the money and I need the job and I need and I'm more than qualified. She gives it to him. So the whole point of this is me understanding that nobody fucking cares about me, right? So she communicates that to him, and then while we're working, I'm on the forklift, and she's like, "Paul," she calls me over. I get off the forklift to go talk to her. When I get off the forklift to go talk to her, she's like, "Hey, you took 2 breaks. One was for 2 hours and one was for an hour and a half." And so I look at her and I respond and say, did you talk to David? David understands. She's like, oh, if you talk to David, then it's not a big deal. So it's dismissed, right? So I go back to work for a little while, and then I come back to her. About an hour and a half, 2 hours go by because we're coworkers, and I ask her like, "So did you find out about my trials and tribulations?" And she's like, "No, not really." And then she's trying to respectfully say like, "I don't really care." And it's like, I know that you don't care. Now I've had that conversation with Nessa, and Nessa should be here, but I've told Nessa directly, nobody fucking cares about Paul Emerson. No one cares. And so my coworker, my manager, she's trying to go out of her way to indirectly get me to understand how we're not friends, we're just colleagues, and it sucks, but it doesn't suck, and she's dancing around the topic. I don't care. But here's the thing. If you didn't care, why did you ask me directly? If you didn't care, why did you ask me? Why did you have to question me or confront me if you don't care? Because you need to make sure that I understand how the world works. You need me to understand it. I don't get to do whatever I want whenever I want. That is always the energy that I get from every woman on this planet except for my own mother. My mother tells me what is expected of me, and she hopes that I'm gonna listen to her because she lives in reality. I need you to take the trash out, but you probably won't. She lives in reality. Every other female on this planet is like, do what I tell you to do right now. And I'm looking at them like, my mother doesn't talk to me like that. So I don't understand why you have to talk to me like that. Don't you understand how the world works? Like, I understand how the world works, but I know that nobody cares about me. So the level that I expect from you is a little bit less than what I expect of my mother. And my mother doesn't talk to me like that. So why should I let you talk to me like that? Specialist Emerson, Prairie Rex, who do you think you are? I think that I am the son of Paul Cameo Shields and Bernadetta. That's Bernadetta Eli. That's who I think that I am. And they don't treat me a certain way in life, and I don't think that you should treat me a certain way in life. The level that you experienced in your household as a child is the expectation you should have for society. It's either the ruler of what you don't want in your life or what you expect in your life, right? We all grew up in a certain level, living in a certain household, and what you experience in your house is either the example of what you don't want or it's what you expect, right? And that's what we should be moving toward. And we should always be moving toward that. And I know that nobody fucking cares about me. I know that. And I shouldn't be challenged on that when I communicate that to African American females. But they want me to understand how you have to move this way, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. They don't care. They don't care. Trump is on TV saying what is the old saying? Don't let your right hand see what your left hand is doing. Trump is communicating to his left hand exactly what he's not going to do for his left hand. His left hand understands exactly what his right hand isn't going to do, and his left hand is still okay with not getting the promises that was made to it by his right hand. He's literally on TV doing this stuff. There's an old a Native American saying that, well, I don't know if it's a Native American saying. I know the Native American saying is that Caucasians speak with forked tongue. But there is definitely a saying that I got from my uncle, and I think that it's correlated to them, but it may not be. But I know for a fact that my uncle taught me at a very young age that Caucasians like to throw stones and hide their hands. And my manager letting us know at the company level that there's a promotion available if you're interested. In me living my life, my 2-month life system, I need to move out of this apartment into a bigger space so that I can seek higher education. While I need to raise while my car is about to break and I need $2,100 for it, and being told that there's an opportunity for me to get more money and more benefits, going to them at the age of 43 as a veteran for this position to only be passed up by somebody younger than me is the 6 years of my experience in the military. But when I speak, I'm constantly told that it's me projecting, that it's my lack of understanding. To which I say, if I am retarded and I cannot function at the functional level as an adult, give me a check so I don't have to go outside and compete. Just give me the money I need to be able to stay in the house and not have to go outside, and you don't have to deal with me. I would love to be able to play video games all day, every day, 40 hours a day, and prepare food and get fat and rot away. I would love the opportunity to do that. But if I have to compete, stop telling me that the experiences that I'm having in the world, that is literally the same experiences that the social media and the internet is expressing to us, is not the one that I'm experiencing. Because if I'm bringing you a solution to the problem and you don't like my solution, don't try to convince me that my problems don't exist. That's at the very minimum. So this is why the relationship dynamic that exists between us exists the way that it does, because this is always what I have experienced in my life. I've always shown up and performed at least at what the minimum requirements are, and have always been put in positions where people that don't do better than me are allowed to skate through life being more of a failure than me, while I'm constantly reminded of my humanity. Not my failures, of my humanity. The capacity by which I make a mistake exists, but it's just because I can't be anything other than a human being. But you put somebody that is equally unqualified as I am above me, and then remind me of what I'm doing wrong and why they're a little bit higher, still making the same kind of mistakes, but because you choose to be you, you don't want to be an African American male, you don't want to be a boy, you don't want to come to work and be treated like a nigger, since you don't want to be a temp as coon, you're not performing at the level we expect of you, so you're not going to get the extra crumb that we're giving to this person because they fit the social dynamic. We need everyone to move around in this company and fit into their respective positions. We definitely need DEI, we definitely need diversity and inclusion, but the conflict is that we need society to stop projecting their bullshit ass stereotypes on us. I don't need to constantly be having people tell me that I am a monster and that I am dangerous and I am threatening to them because the internet has given you these images. What have I actually done to you for you to have a problem with me? What have I actually, how many people have I actually punched in the fucking face for you to constantly be mad at me? And I don't need you to constantly try to get me to punch you in the fucking face so you can prove that I'm violent. You shouldn't get to antagonize me and then send me to behavioral, anger management classes. You antagonize me, you make me upset, you piss me off, and then you send me to anger management so that I can learn how to conform under your bullshit expectation. That's the state of the world. That's how this works. But I've ranted and raved long enough. I need to go to work. So as always, my name is Paul Neverson, and I've given you my 2 cents.